Good morning, everybody. This is the second in series of lectures on pediatric intensive care. We have Dr. Fande speaking on initiation of mechanical ventilation, which would essentially focus on the decision-making process of initiating ventilation and the initial ventilatory settings. Okay, Shekhar, you could go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome all of you for the second lecture to inter-hospital CME on ventilation. With the initiation of ventilation, generally it is a concept in the intensivists and people that just ventilation is a simple thing. When you just decide when to ventilate, and intubate and ventilate, but is not like that. Unless the settings are carefully selected, mechanical ventilation can cause a harm rather than helping the patients. By carefully selecting the settings, we have to just decrease the inspired efforts of the patient, but not eliminate, because it will lead to deconditioning and atrophy of the respiratory muscles. The initiation of ventilation is like science with some element of art. The science is to optimize the gas section, and the art is to achieve that without damaging the lungs. These are the general indications for ventilation. Out of this, respiratory failure is the commonest one. Apnea, respiratory arrest, inadequate ventilation, inadequate oxygenation, and chronic respiratory insufficiency. In cardiac insufficiency, to decrease the work of breathing and to reduce the oxygen consumption, that is an indication to go for ventilation. In neurological indication, there is central hyperventilation or apnea, GCS less than or 8, and inability to maintain the airway. These are the other indications like elective ventilation to decrease the ICP, airway protection in case of drug overdose, following cardiac arrest, and during a recovery on prolonged major surgery or trauma. ABG wise, the hypoxia is there, CO2 less than 50, hypercarbia, and the PCO2 more than 60, to go for ventilation. Respiratory failure is the commonest cause for commonest indication for mechanical ventilation. And there is mainly of two types, hypoxemic and hypercarbia. It can be acute or chronic, both can exist together, and the treatment is to initiate the mechanical ventilation. Hypoxia, commonly caused by hypoventilation, AQ mismatch, shunt, and diffusion impairment, and hypercarbia is hypoventilation and AQ mismatch. These two, hypoventilation and AQ mismatch are the commonest abnormal types of sections. Hyperventilation can be corrected by mechanical ventilation, and AQ mismatch by increasing the area of lungs which is ventilated and increasing perfusion. Then when focusing on oxygenation, two factors mainly affect oxygenation is the MAP and FiO2. It can be PO2 can be increased by increasing the MAP and FiO2. MAP is determined by then other 5 factors: PIP, PEEP, flow rate, ventilator rate, and I time. These are the 5 parameters which increase the MAP. Flow rate by increase producing square waveform, increasing frequency pressure, reversing the I ratio, increasing PEEP, and increasing ventilate rate. Ventilate indirectly affects the MAP and gas section by affecting the I ratio.
Now, amongst the parameters that you have spoken in the last slide, which would be the safest and most effective? Which would be, like most detrimental and least effective? Like we have PIP, PEEP, flow rate, I time, and ventilator rate. So, like, what would be your choice as?
Generally, PIP and FiO2. We go for first to increase the MAP, but if it already achieved a dangerous level, like baby is already on high PIP, and to reduce the barotrauma, we focus on FiO2. But if FiO2 is more than 60%, then in order to avoid oxygen injury, the third parameter we handle is the PEEP, and other things.
So would you put PEEP as the third parameter, or I would, if it is oxygenation, I would maybe put PEEP as the...
Slightly disagree with Shekhar, because as we see area under the curve for the mean airway pressure,
that's right.
the minimum change that will create the maximum effect.
Would
Safe
be with
will be the PEP.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the safest criteria. If I want to improve oxygenation, the first parameter I will change will be PEP, because that will cause least damage and will give me the maximum output. Then this next we can choose between the PIP or the FiO2, because PIP I will choose if I find that the child's this tidal volume he is not achieving, or there is associated ventilatory difficulty.
And also, apart from having its effect on the mean airway pressure, PWP also improves the ventilation perfusion relationship. And this being so, I think that would be, when it comes to oxygenation, one of the most important thing that possibly comes in one's mind would be PWP.
Ventilation, PSO2, that is mainly decided by alveolar ventilation, and that is by respiratory rate and effective tidal volume. PSO2 can be adjusted by adjusting respiratory rate and tidal volume.
So the effective tidal volume or an effective minute ventilation as a reflection of that is another very important parameter.
Yeah, that's why we mentioned is the formula will be the respiratory rate and effective tidal volume, and the tidal volume minus dead space.
Can you just elaborate a bit on what do you mean by effective tidal volume and or effective minute ventilation?
Alveolar minute ventilation will be the effect of multiplication of RR and effect to tidal volume. Whatever tidal volume is ventilated delivering to the patient, something will be lost in the airway.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you want to achievement of the ventilation by increasing the RR, there is some bit of, for every breath there is a loss of some tidal volume.
That's right.
And that is a slightly less effective parameter to improve ventilation.
So dead space ventilation would be a very important point.
Actually, what we can say is the effective minute ventilation is the amount of ventilation we are achieving for the gas exchange. That's actually taking part in gas exchange.
So some terminal bronchioles onwards to the alveoli.
Definitely.
And if you increase the respiratory rate, maybe the percent of ventilation wasted on dead space increases parallel to the increase in the respiratory rate. Isn't that what you mean by this? Yes.
The main goals of mechanical ventilation will be to achieve and maintain adequate pulmonary gas action, reduce work of breathing, minimize the risk of lung injury, optimize patient's comfort, and to normalize blood gas and provide comfort of breathing. This is the basic preparation. Before initiating ventilator, we have to keep ready compressor, oxygen source, ventilator, humidifier, breathing circuit, and test valve. Initial ventilation settings, then we have to set this mode of ventilation, then PIP, PWP, tidal volume, respiratory rate, I time. By that we are setting the I ratio, FiO2, base load, trigger, and ventilator alarm setting. Depending on the mode of ventilation, we are selecting pressure limited or volume limited. The pressure limited tidal volume and ventilation will vary, and we have to set these parameters. In volume limited ventilation, we have to set these parameters, and PIP and mean air pressure will vary. This is the big difference of parameters between pressure ventilation and volume ventilation. Whatever this to be already discussed, these are the set parameter by operator in pressure ventilation, and these are the parameters determined by ventilator. In pressure ventilation, tidal volume will be decided by ventilator, and in volume ventilation, the PIP will be decided by ventilator. Advantages is pressure ventilation is more lung protective in non-compliant lung, and advantage of volume ventilation is with the guaranteed minute ventilation. Because in pediatric, as we use non-cuff tube, there is more of a leak, and there is some element of wastage in tidal volume. So that is not that applicable.
Can you just recapitulate that? Why do we choose pressure ventilation in neonates and pediatrics?
Because first thing is we are not using a cuff tube.
That's right. Yeah.
And most of the tidal volume and ventilation getting wasted due to the peritubal leak. and we are whatever tidal volume we are targeting, that is not actually getting delivered to the patient.
That's right. So sometimes if you, I mean, the basic goal of choosing volume ventilation is to ensure
The
volume,
desired tidal
volume. And if you have a leak,
then that is not achieved.
then the main purpose of putting a patient where volume ventilation is lost. So possibly we might choose pressure ventilation on. Yeah.
These are the initial settings. First thing to choose the mode of ventilator. If baby requires complete support, then you choose assist control or mandatory ventilation. And if the baby requires partial support, then SIME or PA, pressure support ventilation. First parameter FIT. If we are dealing with disease lungs, then start with 100% FIT. And in without lung disease, you can start with 40%. PIP 15-20 cm for normal lungs, 20-25 cm for disease lungs. PWP 6 to 8 for patient with lung disease and 3 to 4 for patient without lung disease. RRBC will depend upon physiological. Up to 1 year we can choose 30, 1 to 6 years of RR of 20, and more than 6 years 50. Eye time, then again according to the age, 0.7 seconds up to 1 year, 1 second for 1 to 6 years, and 1.2 seconds for greater than 6 years. Tidal volume, that is variable, 8 to 12 ml per kg.
So basically you categorize patients into those with normal lung and those with
Normal and disease.
an abnormal lung. And the parameters would be slightly different.
These are the guidelines to initial ventilation. To make it simple, we can follow this chart. It's a type of lungs. First thing, we decide whether we are dealing with a lung ventilation or ventilation for other cause like CNS or something else.
That's right, yeah.
If you have normal lungs, just go for with a normal setting like FIT 0.4, then rate and will be the same. PIP you can choose 15 to 20. But if you are dealing with a disease lung, then we will get two categories. One will be the increased resistance and second will be the decreased compliance. This is the comparison between the two disease conditions, one with decreased compliance and second with the resistance. Parameters will differ. In asthma, we have to keep all these settings slight on lower side, and in ARDS, we have to go slightly higher. Just if we focus on all the parameters, PIP, we may require a higher PIP to overcome the resistance, but not that as compared to ARDS. PWP we definitely we have to keep low in case of asthma to prevent air trapping and hyperinflation, and that we have to keep high in ARDS. Tidal volume, similar thing. RR. FIR2, as asthma is not a there is not a problem of oxygenation, they generally require a lower FIR2 as compared to ARDS. Eye time, then again we have to keep low to prevent air trapping and this one, hyperinflation.
So most of the parameters would be on the lower side
Lower side.
when it comes to asthma as compared to ARDS.
The main difference lies for the PEP, then the respiratory rate and the eye time. These three parameters definitely they are much higher on the ARDS and we have to keep lower on the asthma.
This again the selection of mode depending upon patient's condition and requirement, whether they will support fully or partially. And then PIP decides tidal volume and mean airway pressure to some extent, and depending upon severity of disease or whether it is a lung ventilation or ventilation for other causes, the setting will differ, and further adjustment will be depending upon the APGs. Throughout the ventilation and setting PIP, the target should be to achieve the optimal oxygenation without causing a lung damage, that is a barotrauma. Peak is respiratory pressure, PWP. We already discussed for lung disease, we have to keep slightly higher. Without lung disease, we can keep in 3 to 4. 0 peak for air trapping, that is concept, but generally it is better to go with the physiological peak, that is 3 to 4. Peak works by increasing FRC of the lung and helping to prevent arterial collapse. And it is used to treat a refractory hypoxia. It is not required, it is not required. Tidal volume, that's depending upon the lungs condition, we can choose from 8 to 12 cc per kg. There is a concept of low tidal volume ventilation to accept them with a permissible hypercapnia. These are few conditions where we require to keep a fluid tidal volume with higher rates.
Nitin?
Drop करने का plan है.
No, can
On pressure limited ventilation, increasing the peak within tidal volume, but only the limitation is in pediatrics, the leakage in the ventricular circuit, then peritubal leak, and compressible volume loss is the problem, and that is a big trouble mainly in NICUs. Respirator we can choose depending upon the age of patient. These are the formulas, but it's not necessary always to go with formulas, but you can follow that. FY2 already discussed. For disease man we have to go for higher FY2, and non-disease man we can start with a minimal FY2. IU ratio that also will depend upon the age of patient. This was inverse IU ratio that is generally used in case of ARDS, which is hypoxia is refractory, but that will be the last thing to do because it is a non-physiological and we have to sedate and paralyze the patient in that case. Generally we set few alarms or 100 alarms after setting the basic parameters. Low exhaled volume alarm, if trigger the patient does not exhale the adequate, then alarm it will detect the circuit leak and disconnection. High exhaled volume limit, the pressure control will require one to set higher pressure limit. It is set to 15 ml per kg per hour, and alarm is triggered when the limit is reached, and once the limit is reached, that alarm, the ventilator will terminate the respiration and the expiration will begin. That will by then prevent the valotrauma and barotrauma. Low inspiratory pressure alarm. Alarm should be kept 10 to 15 centimeter aperture below the set PIP.
Can you, can you low inspiratory alarm?
Pressure alarm.
Okay.
This when this alarm will be triggered, there is a falling the alarm pressure setting. That will be the indicator that there is any leak in the circuit or there is a disconnection in the circuit. Ventilator alarm settings. This one, the high inspiratory pressure alarm. The alarm will set 10 to 15 centimeter above the whatever the desired PIP you have set. This will be triggered when that the actual desired PIP crosses the set alarm, and that will be the indication to look for any water in the circuit, kinking or batting of the innovative tube, secretion in the airway, bronchospasm, tension pneumothorax, decreased lung compliance. We have to look for this if there is this high inspiratory pressure alarm.
That's a very important alarm in that sense. Yeah.
Apnea alarm. This is mostly used in NICUs. We just generally set up 15 to 20 seconds time delay. And there is in somewhere there is a backup ventilation is the facility is there. They immediately ventilators shift to backup ventilation, and you will give that alarm. High inspiratory rate alarm. This is generally set 10 to 15 breaths over the observed respirator. High respiratory rate indicates either patient is becoming tachypnea or is sign of distress, and if there is water or is studying in the circuit, that will cause the false triggering, and you will get the higher concentration. High or low FIR alarm. This is a 5 to 10 above and below the set FIR. In that case, we will get if there is a fall in central O2 supply, you will get that alarm. Monitoring on the patient with ventilator. Once the patient is ready and ventilator is set, closely observe the patient for 20 to 30 minutes. Check for the chest expansion with each inspiration. Confirm the air entry, whether it is bilateral equal or not. There should be synchrony. If there is a dysynchrony, buffing or fighting with ventilator, we just check out whether is a selected mode is not appropriate for the patient, settings are not proper, and patient is not comfortable on that particular settings. Maintain hemodynamic stability. Confirm the oxygen saturation and enter CO2 units.
Can you just elaborate on a slide of synchrony?
During observation period after ventilating baby, if there is a desynchronization means fighting with ventilator or there is a bucking, then you just go for just check out whether there are settings selected appropriate for the patient. Is the work of breathing is getting reduced or not? then agitation is there, pain component is there, then we have to act like sedation, analgesia. We have to look from all sides, from ventilator setting to patient's comfort, and whatever care we are providing, like sedation, analgesia, and other things. Chest X-ray, we have to do ET position and lung volume. ABG after 30 minutes of stable ventilated settings. During ventilator support, if a problem like this instability and mechanical problem is faced, then take patient on bag and tube ventilation, and you try to find out whether there is a mechanical problem or there is problem with the patients.
Now that we have intubated and ventilated this patient, let us kind of go through and recapitulate how much weightage you would give to, say, ABG on the decision making of initiation of ventilation. If I have to draw a graph, of the importance of ABG on one side and initiation of ventilation on the y-axis, how much importance would you give to ABG? I mean, if somebody says that, I'm waiting for an ABG report and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to ventilate this patient in an acute situation.
This ABG is not at all mandatory for initiating ventilation. This clinical condition of the patient is you can just, like, if maybe severe distress is there, echo record may be high, and there is any component of hemodynamic instability, you are suspecting some airway problem or CNS inside, then on clinical judgment only you can go for initiation of ventilation. Further titration and adjustment setting will be mostly by ABGs. In few cases, ABG can help. If you are not definite about whether to go for or not, in that case pH, acidosis, and hypoxia and hypercarbia can help, but it is not at all mandatory to initiate the ventilation. More of it is a further monitoring and titration of ventilator settings.
Can we further elaborate? This is a very important point.
Yeah.
Like, let's say a patient who has not been well for last 5 years and he is a candidate for initiating ventilation. What would be the importance of ABG in this patient vis-a-vis there's another patient who has a short history of 2 days and suddenly is an acute cardiorespiratory instability?
Chronic condition and patient is sustaining their condition for 5 years, that means the body is getting compensated and adjusted to the condition. In that case, if whatever pH or whatever PCOT you are getting, or if patient is comfortable, is not to go with exact values of that ABG. At that particular point of time, if you feel his condition is deteriorating or some other element is there, then that is a better judgment to go for ventilation, not only the ABG in that case.
So if I would summarize that if it comes to initiation of ventilation, in a patient who has otherwise been alright and suddenly has an acute cardiorespiratory instability, ABG would be least important. Vis-a-vis there's another patient who has not been well for a long time and the decision to intubate and ventilate him comes in. In that case, ABG would definitely have some importance. But if we were to draw a graph, let's say a graph which shows the importance of ABG on y-axis and on x-axis is the decision to intubate and initiate, as compared to a situation where we are maintaining a patient, and as a third situation where it comes to weaning. So we're just trying to draw a graph of the importance of ABG in the whole cycle of ventilation, initiation, maintenance, and weaning. How would you rate ABG in these three circumstances?
Definitely, as Shekhar mentioned, for initiating the ventilation, our decision is always clinical.
Or once in a while, maybe on an
as we have
ABG.
discussed for the chronic scenario.
Yeah. But mostly
it will be a clinical scenario. For monitoring, once the patient is on the ventilation, ABG will help us, will guide us once we are increasing or decreasing any ventilator setting. Now again, the concept is there of the permissive hypoxemia and permissive hypercapnia is there, but still the ABG has a lot of role for.
And some of these patients could be monitored non-invasively by doing a capnography and a pulse oximetry. And if they're stable, like let's say an example of Guillain-Barré syndrome, who has been in PSU for last 1 month, the rate of ABG would be much less as compared to the patient with ARDS with an unstable lung.
will require more.
But there is a commonly asked question as to how often one would you do ABG, and when it comes to weaning,
As far as the weaning is concerned, ABG definitely helps you. It will guide you whether the patient is at the right path, at the right point of to win the baby. It is one of the guidelines to win the baby is in ABG.
but again it is true. But even
yes,
then,
we generally go for one is the patient condition, stability, hemodynamic. Second thing, op paralysis, sedation.
right,
Third thing, minimal settings on ventilator. In that case, if baby is on minimal settings with comfortable,
yeah,
and
yeah,
if you are getting some element abnormal on ABG, anyways we are going to expert the patient. In that case also.
Even then we are near to the normal
Yeah.
ABG, but the baby is stable, then we can definitely win out. But it gives you a guideline.
Additional supportive paralysis.
So if I were to draw a graph of the three situations, initiation, maintenance and weaning, then it would be a bimodal graph. You know, at the time of initiation and acute situation, there is hardly any role of ABG. In maintenance, there will be some role. In weaning, that role might increase a shade bit. But in all the three situations, ABG coupled with the clinical parameters would play a role, least in initiation and maybe to some extent when we wean the patient from the
If you
ventilation.
say like that, for the initiation it's just a supplement or a complement.
Right,
For continuation, it is a simple monitoring tool.
yeah.
And for the weaning, it definitely
And
helps.
again,
We
yeah,
have
that's
better
right.
monitoring tools in the form
Exactly.
of continuous capnogram and
Yeah,
continuous
exactly.
pulse oximeter.
Yeah.
That
So the
importance
days-
has decreased during morning.
Yeah, so
As
the,
we have said that rather than taking a photograph, I
Yeah.
will cover a video.
right.
So why not to look at video rather than
Then
taking a single?
so it bimodal curve would mean, you know, like maybe at the end there could be some use. During maintenance, we might use the non-invasive continuous ways of monitoring what's happening to blood gases, and then depending on the clinical state that the patient is in. Okay.
As rightly said, if weaning starts with intubation, we have to judge each and every time whether baby really needs continuous ventilation or not, because timely as monitoring is concerned, timely discontinuation is important as timely initiation.
But don't you think I would give a lot of importance to an ABG done 30 minutes after I have initiated a ventilation? Isn't that so? So that really can
yeah,
give
you
me.
can come down or
Yeah, yeah,
grade
yeah.
up, go on higher on settings.
That's
on
right.
First ABG. Generally we do 30 minutes or 1 hour after ventilation.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever we are ventilation we are doing, how much we are benefit we are getting on ABG, that will first ABG will be important.
That would be a very important parameter
Definitely.
to really as to what we're doing and what is the disease process.
Because we are starting with maximum in beginning,
Yeah,
with 100% FiO2 and higher settings.
right,
We
right.
can't give that much for long duration to prevent oxygen damage, oxygen lung injury.
There's another question in our mind, Shikhar. Many a times we go across various institutes and the people who are starting the ventilator and they do not have an ABG machine.
Yeah.
And they ask us, should we start ventilation without an ABG? So what's your opinion regarding that?
Okay, they can start. They can start ventilation without ABG, because we already discussed throughout this initiation, monitoring and weaning also there is a major role will be the clinical. ABG is always supportive. In
Right.
some state there is a ABG role is there. And a few setup are there where they are doing ABGs for each and every change in the setting.
Right.
So I've seen one center in South.
That's right.
Over a period of 4 days, they have done 100 ABGs. We can't even imagine also.
That's
for
right.
RDS patient, this one newborn. That is one way of management, but it's not at all that much necessary. If you are a non-invasive monitoring like you have this one pulse oximetry and capnograph obviously will not be there in periphery, but
So often, I know when it comes to this, when I'm asked this question, what I tell them that if it comes to that, and if we don't have an ABG, you can always start MV. And what I mean by MV, can you just guess?
It's a manual ventilation.
It is manual ventilation. See, don't waste time. You start manually ventilated patient, and then you can go on further. But a lot of people would say, I don't have an ABG, can you start ventilation, can you maintain ventilation? For ventilation, I think an ABG is an important parameter.
you do not
But-
have an ABG,
Yeah.
you will start mechanical.
Yeah, but at least start ventilation.
Start.
So that then you have not wasted the golden minute. That is important and safe in those terms. Okay.
Yeah, this is the take-home message. Mechanical ventilation is a combination of art and science to optimize the gas section without minimal lung injury. And if not done in a proper way, it actually can cause a harm rather than getting the injury. Ticket of PIC OPD letter.
Okay, this was a good discussion, and some of these points really are difficult to be covered entirely theoretically. And every patient would be monitored on a time scale. The decision can't be point wise. The decision will also depend on how things have changed for the management that we have taken. Like for example, if a child is an asthmatic with an extensive nebulization and in 10 minutes is improved, then you could revert back to the decision that you had taken initially to ventilate him and maybe observe him for some time. So I think the message is well taken. It is a lot of art and maybe equal or slightly less amount of science to initiate ventilation without doing much harm. Thank you. Any comments on?
Yes, thank you. Can we incorporate that chart which I have shown you? I'll just show the chart for the
Uh-huh.
initiation of ventilation.
Yeah.
नाही त्याच्या खालचं आणि असं घेते पूर्ण नाही घेते
Okay. So these are some guidelines for setting up a neonatal ventilator. Can you just scroll that?
खाली
Yeah. Go on. Right. So a lot of them they were covered, but this organizes this into
Single chart.
one single chart. So it is worth keeping in the intensive care unit to be revised before we take a decision. But at the time of taking decision, most often the decision is taken on clinical grounds.
One more point we like to add,
Yeah.
once we are initiating the ventilation, is the clear-cut goals in our mind,
Yeah.
that what we want to achieve
Exactly.
once we start the ventilator. That
Yes.
point we missed in those
Yeah,
slides.
that's a very important point because let's say a patient with muscular dystrophy. Like I just had an occasion to see a child with Nevalin myopathy. The question is, when you initiate a ventilation, the first reflex question that comes in mind is, how do I take him out? And if the situations don't demand that, then it becomes a very half-done kind of a job. Because a complete job of ventilation would also mean completely taking out this child from ventilation. So your point is very well taken, that when we initiate anything, like if I started building a house, then I must understand the cost involved and the time involved. If I initiate a house and I don't have the money, I would be leaving it halfway. So for ventilation, a completeness of a job would be ultimately taking him off the ventilation. A lot of
Initiation and timely discontinuation.
Yes. Would be a very, very important point.
initiation should initiate the process of winning in your mind.
Right.
That thing.
So apart from that, we should have a set goal. We should direct our colleagues or the nursing staff that what parameters we want to achieve. While
Yeah.
doing this ventilation, our saturation lower limit should be this, the higher limit should be this.
Yeah.
And that should be very clear cut. We want the blood pressure to be maintained in this range, urine output to be maintained in this range. CO2, we need to be maintaining in this range. pH also we need to
So when
maintain
we
in this range.
essentially talk of ventilation, we must talk of tissue
Tissue
ventilation.
ventilation, definitely.
See, sometimes I've seen patients who have been on excellent ventilatory parameters and are not perfused. Okay, now the intensivist tells me that he is maintaining good blood gases, but when I tell him, see, you are maintaining good gases, but none of them are getting delivered to the tissues. So, it's very important to see that you are ventilating and oxygenating tissues, and that should be the gold standard, and then keep it out as fast as possible. Thank you very much for the lively discussion.
Thank you.